channel. It's Billy again, bringing you another Awaken Chaos Era video. Today's video, we are in part 3 of our faction series, looking at the Lasir faction. We're going to take a look at the heroes, look at their skills, see where we can utilize them in the game. Let's get into it. Welcome to the video. Today we are looking at the Lasir faction right here. So we've got a little bit of each from the categories. I can tell you commons pretty much aren't very good. Rare, she's not very good either, so these are pretty much going to be food, so I'm not really going to bother covering them. A couple of these elites do have some skills that may be helpful in different areas of the game. Primarily we've been looking at legendaries, and the epics are alright. So Nicholas here does have the highest attack in the faction. The cool thing about his trait is he grants the caster the same speed as the fastest character on their side +1 in the first turn. So it basically guarantees him to go first his first turn. But if you ascend this skill, he's +1 speed at the start of every turn. So this will allow him to go first every single time that you're going. So this would be fantastic for an arena champion, or hero, excuse me. Really anywhere else in the game, he would be very beneficial with having that ascended skill, because every time he goes, it's going to be first. Looking at his basic attack, he does 80% damage, which increases up to 100. If after dealing the damage, the target's current health is less than 50% of max health, pursue all enemies dealing 40% damage. And if you look at that, that scales to 50. So his basic attack, if the opponent is less than 50%, then it becomes an AoE. So not really good for like a boss, but for waves that's really good. For arena, if you build him with enough attack, that's going to be really good as well. So that is a fantastic skill. Looking at his passive, so this is worded a little strangely. I had a friend in the Discord test it, and I think it needs to be reworded. So when the caster takes lethal damage, if there is still any ally on the field, it gains undead, and their ultimate ability is replaced for 1 turns. This passive can only be triggered once per battle. So when a friend of mine tested this, it's his ultimate skill reset. His ultimate skill wasn't replaced. So he went undead, and then his ultimate skill was reset. And I'm assuming the level 2 version of this, it says duration extended by 1 turn, means maybe he goes undead for 2 turns instead of just 1 turn. And then if we look at his ultimate here, deals 80% damage to all enemies and grants attack up to a random ally for 1 turn. This gets reduced to a 2 turn cooldown. It goes to 100% damage. So if he's able to AoE multiple times, that's really good. So he's definitely somebody worth building really in anywhere in the game. Arena and waves are, I would say, the best for him, but you can pretty much use him wherever. So if we look at the next one, which is the Darkened Nicholas, his trait applies stealth mode when his character health falls below 50%. So stealth mode essentially prevents him from being able to be targeted. Basic and ultimate abilities are unavailable during stealth mode. So when he's in stealth mode, he cannot do anything. And if we look at the Ascended, grant stealth mode and applies shield for 2 turns when this character's health falls below 50%. Basic and ultimate abilities are unavailable during stealth mode. This ability may be triggered once every 2 turns. So I don't know how I like that, where once he's stealth, he can't do anything. So if he's by himself and he falls below 50%, he's just a target. And this shield doesn't necessarily specify how much the shield is. Is it 30%? Is it 50%? Is it based on max HP? Is it based on current? So unfortunately, not a lot of details here, and I don't know too many people who have him to be able to test this. From what I've heard, this kit is really weakened because of this skill. Dark Nicholas does, though, have the highest health, the highest defense, and the highest crit rate in this faction. So if you look at health, S+, I'm pretty sure that's the only S plus that I've seen. So he has the potential to be amazing, but with this, it kind of leaves him as a sitting duck. So if we look at his basic skill, deals 70% damage to an enemy target. This attack deals extra damage based on the amount of health lost by the caster. So in this regard, it's pretty good because as you lose health, his attack gets higher. So his health pool is significantly high. So that's a lot of damage that you can take to continue to produce more attack. So you're going to want to definitely pair him with somebody who heals because the additional damage isn't based on the difference in the healed damage that has been done, but the full amount of damage that's been done. Or you can put some gear on him that heals him every turn. That will also help him continue to maintain his health while still being able to do additional damage because he is losing health. If we look at his passive, he applies Undead after this character takes lethal damage. This ability may be only active once every 9 turns, and then if you upgrade it to level 2, every 6 turns. So essentially, if his health gets down to 1, he goes undead for 3 turns. So if he's undead for 3 turns, and then this trait happens where he goes stealth mode, again, sitting duck can't really do anything. If this if they would change this trait here, I think in partnership with this passive being undead for 3 turns, and then all that additional damage you'll be able to do because all that health you lost, he would be a monster with the amount of damage he does. It could potentially be game breaking, depends on how much that damage scales based on the lost HP. Like if it was maybe half percent HP or half percent damage to 5 HP or something like that. So it just depends on how that's going to scale. So we look at his ultimate, deals 105% damage to 2 enemies and applies untreatable for 2 turns, so healing reduced by 100%. This attack deals extra damage based on the amount of health lost by character. Again, we see more damage that he's doing based on his health that he's losing. This gives you an additional 45%, so you get a scale of 150 damage. This goes from a 5-turn cooldown to a 3-turn cooldown. There is only, I want to say, maybe 4, possibly 5 heroes in this game that have the untreatable skill. He is the only one that's legendary. I want to say 2 of them are common. So this skill is definitely beneficial for him to have since not too many other characters have it. Alright, so over to Valeria. So her trait increases her defense and speed by 0.5% per 1 HP lost. So we have another hero here whose skills are going to be altered based on damage received. And then the Ascended, it's 1% health lost, increased defense, and increased speed by 1%. So it's a 1-for-1 on that. Her health isn't super high, but you can definitely build that up a bit with what's it called? The gear that gives you additional health, as well as gear that heals you as you're attacking. We look at her first skill, deals 70% damage, which scales up to 100, with 50% chance of applying attack down for 1 turn. So that'd be pretty much good on a boss. If we look at her special, deals 50% damage to all enemy forces and dispels 1 buff from each. So she's an AoE attack, 50% damage, and then she has a cleanse of 1 buff. And then heals herself by 6% of health per dispelled buff. So you get 6% heals, and then you can get an additional 10, so a total of 10% heals for each debuff removed from the enemies. If the caster's health is under 60%, then this ability has no cooldown. So she has a built-in healing, which allows her to get more speed and get more defense. So she basically becomes faster and tankier as the match progresses. And then if we look at her final skill, removes 30% of health from the caster and deals 120% damage, which maxes out to 150, to all enemies with a 100% chance of extending cooldown on the target's main ability by 1 turn, plus a 50% chance of further extending the target's other ability cooldowns by 1 turn. So she's got a lot of stuff going on in this ability here. So she removes health from herself, which is typically never a good thing. But with her second skill healing herself, and if you get her in gear that heals herself and partner with a heal her, this isn't going to be too bad. She can do 150% damage to all enemies, so she has 2 AoE skills. I have not seen a lot of heroes in this game that do that, so that is definitely good to have. AoE skills are good for all areas of the game. Typically, AoE damage skills do less damage as a whole, but you attack more people, so that's definitely good. Then she's going to extend the cooldown on the main ability of whatever target it is, and potentially another ability as well for 1 turn. So she could basically put the ultimate and the special on additional cooldown. So she definitely has a lot of good skills here. Her stats are kind of nothing that is, top of the charts. They can definitely be improved, but we do know that her defense and speed get increased as the match progresses. So if we look here at Vance, he does have the highest speed in the faction at 133. His trait, the caster's attack, ignores all defensive buffs. And then if we look at it ascended, if the target is affected by a buff, deals 20% extra damage. So any kind of increased defense that should also work with shields as well, he'll be able to ignore that and then potentially do 20% more damage. So he's going to do 80% damage, that scales up to 100, and then apply an attack down. That's okay. Deals 105% damage, which we get when it's maxed out. You can get that to 150. To an enemy target, applies defense down for 3 turns. And then if we look at the last skill, deals 106% damage to the target, plus 20% bonus damage per buff over the target. So his A2 lands attack, or his A1 lands attack down, his A2 lands defense down, and then his attack third is going to do additional damage. So if you're gonna, he would be good on a bosses if you pair him with somebody who also does other debuffs apart from decrease attack and decrease defense. I'm kind of mixed on him, to be honest. He does have good potential. From what I've heard, he drops off substantially in mid-game because as you get higher up into the bosses, their health and their defense and stuff like that are going to scale up quite a bit. So early game, using him in bosses, he's going to do really well. But from what I hear, he kind of scales down the further you progress into the game. This guy, Kyle, has a very unique skill on his A3. We'll take a look at that here. Each attack on the caster reduces the cooldown on their ultimate by 1 turn. This ability may be triggered once per turn. Ascended, when attacked, reduce the cooldown of your ultimate ability by 1 turn. So if somebody hits him, every time, well, at least once per turn, whenever he's attacked, that ultimate gets a cooldown added to it. And then every hit that he gets, your ultimate will be reduced by 1 turn once that's ascended. So that's great for being able to use your skill 3, which I said is very unique. So we'll take a look at that here shortly. Deals 6% damage to an enemy with a 100% chance of applying Light Stamp. So Light Stamp reduces the damage dealt by this character. And then your damage will max out at 100%. Looking at his special, grants his character a counterattack, dealing 35% damage and applying sleep for 1 turn. This ability may be triggered once per turn. So sleep is not really good on a boss, but a counterattack is pretty good. This last skill here transforms the caster into the target enemy for 2 turns. So as long as it's not a boss or an elite, I'm not sure what an elite is exactly, I've used him in arena before, and whichever opponent you attack, so you want him to be very fast, which is good. That his speed stats are pretty high. He will transform into that other hero, grants an immediate bonus round. So right after he uses it, he gets to go again, and another bonus round at the end of the current turn. So he will go 2 turns after he changes into whichever hero that he converts to. So if you convert into somebody who has some crazy skills, he's going to do a lot of damage. So in theory, this skill sounds like it's going to be really good. I haven't played with it a whole lot, but it is very unique. And when I did use it, it was quite interesting. So now we're into the elites. Looking at Anna, attack deals bonus damage equal to 2% of this character's health. And then Ascended does 5%. Deals 80% damage to an enemy with a 20% chance of applying stun for 1 turn. Deals 120% damage to an enemy target and applies speed down and attack down for 2 turns. Deals 106% damage to an enemy with a 75% chance of applying mocking on the target, which is like a provoke. And then grants invincibility for 1 turn. So when she's provoking the enemy, she can't receive damage. So this has potential. If this or this were AoE. So if she could attack all of the enemies and force them onto her and then become invincible for 1 turn so it wouldn't take any damage, that would be really good. But since it's to a single target, that's a little iffy. And then same thing with this. If this was an AoE speed down, attack down, that would be great as well. So because these skills aren't AoE at all, I would say I wouldn't focus on her personally. She does have a lot of debuffs, which is good. So she could be partnered with, another hero that does more damage based on debuffs. But overall, the stats aren't really good at all, and then the skills are kind of mid-tier. Freya here, she does have pretty decent speed and crit rate. Looking at her trait, disables buffs to attack rating of whichever enemy has the highest attack. Disables buffs to the attack rating of whichever 2 enemies have the highest attack. So essentially, whichever enemy or whichever 2 enemies, if ascended, has the highest attack, any buffs that they have are disabled. So it doesn't say that they're removed. So essentially what it would mean is if they've got an increased attack, they're not going to do that increased damage. Or if they have increased crit or increased crit damage, they're not going to use those against her. So if you look at her, A1 deals 60% damage to an enemy with a 70% chance of applying defense down, which goes up to 100, so that's good. She'll land a defense down 100%, and her damage scales up to 80. Looking at her special, deals 90% damage to an enemy and grants a pincer attack to a random ally. This scales up to 120. This skill is good because anytime you can use pincer, which pincer means it allows other heroes and other hero to attack with her, that's definitely beneficial. And then we look at her last skill, deals 100% damage to an enemy, goes up to 140. And applies attack up to all allies for 1 turn. So between having attack up to your entire team, having pincer, and mitigating buffs on whichever units have the highest attack, definitely somebody I'd say would be worth working on. Good speed, good crit rate, okay health, but her kit looks pretty good. Looking at Evelyn, grants the caster 3% bonus attack at the start of each turn. This bonus may be stacked up 10 times. And then if we look at, you can go plus 5%. So she can gain between 30 or 50% bonus attack as the game progresses, the match progresses. So the longer she's in the battle, the better she's going to get. Deals 80% damage to an enemy and applies attack up for 1 turn. Deals 105% damage to an enemy target and applies defense down for 3 turns, so that's good. Deals 106% damage to a target. Critical damage is dealt if the target's defense has been reduced. I mean, the benefit here is this decreased defense is not a percentage based on landing, so it's RNG instead of accuracy based. And this ultimate's really not that good, to be honest. So unfortunately, this trait's pretty good, but the rest of her skills don't really seem to work out that well. Marion here, all middle of the road stats, but if we look at her skills, they're pretty unique. Applies lifesteal up to the caster and all allies, which is 10% lifesteal, and then applies lifesteal up to if there is ascension. So you've got built-in heals with her trait. Her A1 deals 70% damage to an enemy target and applies defense down for 1 turn. So her A1 scales up to 100%, and she does a, I don't want to say guaranteed because nothing's guaranteed because of RNG, but it's not a percentage chance to land. Her special here is what's unique. Protects an ally for 1 turn, during which any damage or healing received by the protected ally is delayed until after the end of the turn. So if somebody hits whichever ally she's protecting, they won't receive that damage immediately. At the end of the turn, they'll receive that damage. If there's a lifesteal up, they won't receive that damage. They'll receive that damage at the end of the turn. Reduces the total amount of delayed damage dealt to the ally after the end of their turn by 50%, and increases healing and lifesteal received by the ally after the end of their turn by 150%. So, if there's any healing, it's increased. If there's any lifesteal, it's increased. If there's any damage against, it's decreased. I haven't tried this out, but I would have to assume the heals would happen before the damage is received. So, this special skill is really good. Pretty much good any area of the game, to be honest. And then looking at her final skill, deals 120% damage to an enemy target and heals whichever unit on this caster's team has the least health for 70% of the damage dealt, which goes up to 100%, and her damage can go up to 150%, so she's got good heals. So basically all of her skills work together with one another. You've got the lifesteal up, which goes well with the special. You've got, or the special. So I guess this should be ultimate, not special. The healings that she does with her ultimate helps. The defense down, that's just always good to have on an A1. So all around, unfortunately her stats are a little low, but her kit is really good. So I would definitely say she would be worth somebody building. Tracker, the only rare here. She has bleeding on her first skill, which is only a 50% chance of landing. She has a plus 10 attack for passive, and then she does another 50% chance for bleeding. I don't think she's really any good to build, and then same thing I said with these commons, they're not really worth building either. So that is our Lasir faction. Definitely some unique skills built into that faction there. Hopefully you enjoyed that and that video gave you some information that you didn't know. If you like this content, I would ask if you could please subscribe. And if you put on notifications, you'll get that whenever I post a new video. If you would like to discuss any of this, feel free to post a comment, and I would appreciate all likes. Thanks, and have a nice day.